Scorpio 10, a fellowship supper. So we have the two aspects here of eating with a group and the fellowship that comes from that. And on the one hand, the eating with a group idea is acknowledging that because we have physical bodies, we have physical needs, and eating is one of them. We can extend this to include house building, and there's another degree which has to do with the collective house raising functionality of a community. We do other things with people who we don't really like very much, especially not at the beginning perhaps, but we just find it practically helpful to share some of our activities with others, and this is how community is formed. And we find, interestingly, that this type of relationship, which differs in a very, very significant way from parenting relationships and sexual relationships and other things like that, where a certain amount of freedom of choice is denied, as in the parenting, or very explicit, as in love relationships. And you know, in a community that you don't get a lot of choice, these are the people that you have to deal with. You can prefer some other than others, but you know, getting on with your neighbours is a bigger challenge in some way than getting on with your lover, because your neighbours are going to be there until they decide to leave. You can't get rid of them. If you want to leave, then you have to leave. You know, it's a big deal dealing with your neighbours, and your community is an extension of that. So we do that for practical reasons, and we develop a certain way of being with the other members of our fraternity, we can call it that, which is highly respectful, typically courteous, friendly, and yet not profoundly intense. We kind of avoid getting into intense matters. We talk about the weather. We compliment them on their garden or something, you know, so that we just maintain this rather shallow interaction. And on one level, that shallowness is like, well, what is that? It's just nothing on the one level. But on the other level, it's actually quite a skill, a social skill. And what happens if we don't go along with the social norms and we keep ourselves within the acceptable range of behavior? If we don't do that, then we find ourselves on the margins of society. And that's rather uncomfortable for most people. Some of us like living on the margins because that's where all the action is, and that's where you feel much more alive. But for others, it's not comfortable to live outside of the level of social approval. And so we have to make our decision about where we stand in relationship to this whole question. How deeply committed are we to our society, our community, on the one hand, and on the other hand, how deeply involved are we in self-expression? Because self-expression always takes you out of the mainstream values. It always must. The mainstream values are based on the lowest common denominator principle. We all help ourselves in a physical emergency. If a storm comes and somebody has a tree to move to get their car to work, the neighbours will help out, whether or not they like each other, typically. And they make sure they don't dislike each other. That's the primary thing here. Make sure you don't dislike your neighbour, and the neighbour doesn't dislike you. Because one day a storm will come, and you need the neighbour not to dislike you for that to be safe. The deepest wisdom here is where you draw that line between self and community. And the spiritual approach to this is quite clear, is that we have to see the community merely as the context of our self-expression, not the purpose of it, not the expression of it. So if we find ourselves to be proud of the fact that we fit in with the community, that we're no different from anyone else, that we know how to behave and actually there's nothing else going on. There's nothing in our lives which the community would not approve of. If that's what we believe, then really that's not going to take you forward on a spiritual level. That ordinariness is not self-expression. It's capitulation. The true spiritual seeker is always going to be marginal, always going to be a bit eccentric, always going to be a little bit in danger of being disapproved of by the mainstream and get gossiped about and have a bad reputation about something or other. That's because spirituality is the exception rather than the rule. We have to distinguish between religiosity and spirituality. Those who are religious are just sheep following the track of what they're taught to believe without thinking it through for themselves, from the perspective of the mystic they are anyway. I don't mean to be rude. Sheep want to be sheep, presumably. But if you're simply following the religious code, then you're not going to be interested in Sabian mysteries. If you're interested in Sabian mysteries, it's because you want to find the deeper truth, the subtle truth within things. And that's not what religion is for. However, Rudyard focuses on the aspect of social involvement, which takes slightly higher relief, not just the neighbour and the community generally speaking, not just our society, but a specific aspect of it. The fraternity is called, the particular group with which you identify most closely, most particularly, your own circle of friends within society. So that idea of a circle of friends, the people that you would go out to dinner with, not just the neighbour, but the special people. These people, they tend to be able to form a group identity, and any individual within that group is less than the group itself. There's no particular special people, no particular leader, no special hierarchy. It's just the group of mates, your group of friends, and that friendship circle is just taken for granted by so many people. And yet, if you actually leave it for maybe 10 years or something, you go away for a long time, and you come back, and you still find that it's in place, the depth of your connectedness to that circle will be made known to you. And it's worth thinking about that before you go away for 10 years. Just think about it now. How profoundly relevant it is in your life that you are a part of a circle of friends. And it may be that you have no particularly intimate or intense connection with any one of them individually. In my case, I'm a member of a musical set, and sometimes I go and I jam with the rest, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get invited to a party that one of them has, and I go along. And it's my set, and I'm not particularly connected with anyone within it, but it's there for me. If I need a bit of company, if I need something to do, then it's there for me. And if I went away for a long time and came back, those would be the people that would be there for me. And they would hold me and reintroduce me into the community life here. And this fraternity aspect, this camaraderie, is seen to be understood by Rudyard to have a profound significance because of its lack of high relief, its lack of intensity, its non-celebration of any individual. Because of that, then the group itself can be what unfolds, and the strength of group identity has a reality within us personally. So whichever set you're part of is an important aspect of who you are. So we're asked within this degree to contemplate that. What is our set? Who do we identify with as a group? What is our group? First of all, do we have one? Because if we don't, we're missing a part of ourselves. And secondly, does that group matter to us? Is that something that we give attention to and energy to and sometimes money and assistance and so on? Do we involve ourselves in its well-being? And it's suggested here that perhaps we should. Perhaps we ought to understand that it's a part of our own well-being and therefore it needs to be nurtured. And because it will provide more than it receives from us. We get back more than we give in. It's an important thing to contemplate, is what Rudyard is saying. What's your set? And what's your relationship with your set?